Welcome back to Life and Style. This is Thursday edition of Inspirational Thursday. Now, every single Thursday, when it comes to this part of the show, we tell you how to, make money. But today we're talking how you can manage your debts. Watu wako na madeni mingi huko nje. So we need to find a way on how to, manage that and make sure that we are not, head deep in debts. And to help us talk about that, we have Manyara here, who's a trainer and coach in personal finance. I got it right? Yes,
yes,
I did.
That's quite correct, yes.
Personal finance. So what is personal finance? Well, how different is personal finance from, the other finance, like business finance?
Well, the reason I like to specify personal finance is because I talk about how each individual spends their own money. It's got nothing to do with those complicated balance sheets and all that high finance. No, this is about how you spend your own money.
How did you come about this? Were you at some point spending too much, or people around you?
Oh, yes. In fact, if you read my book, I start with a story.
Here.
Yes, I start
How
with
to
a
become
story.
a lifelong financial success. Catherine, I'm sure you are, looking at me with green eyes, but, we'll pass it over. Okay.
Yes, I talk about how I ended up studying how to become a personal financial planner. And then that was in the United States when I got into a lot of trouble. And then I came back and basically I started by writing about it, writing what I had learned. But sooner or later, people started calling me and organizations would call me, can you come and talk to our people? It evolved eventually into a training course. We still run the training course and we call it Money Skills.
Money Skills.
Yes, so people come and learn how they can actually organize their finances so that they can achieve the things they want to achieve.
What was the gap in the market then? What was the problem that needed to be solved through your training?
Well, you see, most people have never, ever been taught how to manage their own finances. We go to school, we go to university, we are taught all those careers that
Business education,
business
that's what it's
education.
called in high school.
Yes, but then also we are taught our professions. Whatever profession one is, you're taught how to earn money. But after that, you're on your own. So we end up making big mistakes. We end up in so much debt. We end up in trouble generally.
True.
Yeah.
True. So that's where you come in.
Yes.
Debt management. I would start with the basics, like getting into debt. Does it start small, or how do you know that this is terrible? This trend is not good for me as a person.
Well, actually, not all debt is bad. There's good debt and there's bad debt.
There's good debt?
Oh, absolutely.
Let's talk about the good debt before we go to the bad debt.
Okay. Good debt is any money which you have borrowed to buy something that's appreciating. And of course, so long as you don't borrow more than you can afford to repay.
Okay.
If you borrow something and buy something that's appreciating, your financial situation improves over time. For instance, if you bought a house, you financed with a mortgage, by the time you finish paying off that house, it'll probably be many times more
than the original
price, and probably more than the cost plus the interest you have paid over for it. So that's one good debt. Money borrowed to finance something which is appreciating in value. Another good debt is when you borrow money and you invest it in a business that's viable and you know how to run the business. That's a good debt because you'll pay off the debt from the proceeds of the business, and the interest is tax deductible. So you end up ahead.
Yeah.
So that's a good debt.
That's a good debt.
Another good debt is if you borrowed money and took yourself for a course which will increase your earning capacity. That's another good debt. So all those are good debts. But then the ones which get people into a lot of trouble are the bad debts. And unfortunately, they are the most tempting. You walk in the middle of the shopping, into any shopping mall, and you see very nice things displayed there.
They know how to do that. They know how to do that.
And then usually they cost much more than most people have in cash. So, for instance, if you were to buy a television set, it might be costing 100,000 bob. Most people would not be having that much. So,
But I want to see it on my wall.
oh yes, oh yes. You want to see, you want to watch the football games.
When Messi is running this direction, you're following him.
Oh yes, and they're really, really attractive.
Yeah.
So, to tempt people to buy, to make it possible for a lot more people to buy, you'll find that there are higher purchase schemes where you pay a little money and then pay the balance over a couple of years. Or you can borrow from the SACCOs, or you can borrow from the bank. Now, that's the kind of debt which gets people in trouble. Why? Because that item you're buying is decreasing in value. That's a depreciating asset.
Yeah.
And eventually you'll have to replace it.
Yes.
So you end up paying much more than the actual cost of the item. In fact, if you go the higher purchase route, you might probably pay 2 or 3 times the price.
Over.
Yeah, so it's really expensive. And then we also borrow to go on holidays.
Yes.
Oh yes, it's very tempting. People borrow to finance their weddings.
Yes.
People borrow.
That is a very trending habit, which is not so good.
And it's unfortunate.
It's very unfortunate.
On that day, you'll impress a lot of people. But once they've left, it's only one day. You know, a wedding is one day.
One day.
It's the marriage that's supposed to last forever.
Yeah.
But the wedding is only one day. And most of those people, yes, they'll say, oh, this is a good wedding. But the food wasn't so good.
I know. After you've borrowed a loan.
Yes. And then they continue with their lives and you are left with the loans. And remember, you might think that you have impressed them, but just the following weekend, there'll be a bigger and more impressive wedding. And you've forgotten, but your debts are still there.
Yes.
So we get ourselves in this kind of problems by borrowing because it's easy to borrow. The SACCOs are there, the banks are there, the credit cards are there. It's easy to borrow these days. So it's easy to put ourselves in a lot of trouble. So what we need to do is start thinking before we actually...
Do I really need to do this? So if you're having a wedding, do we need to do it now? Can we save up to the wedding? Because it's not an emergency, is it?
No,
it's not an emergency. I don't think a wedding is an emergency.
True, definitely not. But of course, the emotions involved there are difficult to control.
Yeah.
But prudence, we should be more prudent about how.
It's true. Yeah. So let's talk about a person who's trying not to get into debt. And we'll also talk about a person who's already in debt, but let's just talk about someone who's not trying to get into debt. How do I go about managing myself and my finances to just, be on the lookout, to just be safe in terms of how much am I spending, how much am I getting?
Okay. The first thing you should do is realize there's one rule in personal finance, which I call the cardinal rule of personal finance, is that you must always spend less than you earn, always.
Always.
And to do that, you have to actually track your expenditure. Most of us don't know how much we spend. Most of us don't. We might know a couple of things. Okay, my rent is this much, my school fees for my children is this much, because they've got receipts for those.
True.
But beyond that, most people don't have a clue. They don't know how much they spent last weekend when they went out. They don't know.
They don't even keep the receipts.
They don't keep anything.
And the tips.
Oh yes. So if you don't track your expenditure,
okay,
it'll be very difficult to know how much you're spending, and you'll end up breaking that rule that you should spend less than you earn. And it's critical that you spend less than you earn so that you have something left. And that something left is what will help you invest so that you can achieve the bigger things that you want to achieve. You might be planning to buy a house sometime in the future. You will not be able to buy one unless